Mathews beats in vinyl cracks. Feel the drop, it takes you back. Heartbeats sync with dusty tracks. A sound attack, no plan, no map.
All right, so as many of you guys know, there's been a lot of changes backstage at TNA recently, and I communicated to you guys over the past year or so. And then obviously this started with Scott Demore being fired. This was the first domino to fall. But I had communicated to you guys that more changes were coming. And they're not always things that are going to happen right away. I told you guys that over time, more people were going to be removed from their positions and they were going to be replaced. And it's not always realistic to just well, it's never realistic to just get rid of everyone at once. You're not going to completely overhaul everything. You're going to obviously move in order of priority, and you're going to wait until you have people um, highly qualified in that role, because you don't last thing you want is musical chairs. You don't want to, okay, we're hiring this person to do this and then just get rid of them again a couple months later. They're trying to have some kind of consistency, longevity in regards to the way they're operating. So the first name we're going to talk about here, Anthony Ciccone. I try to put this out on X to try to get the ball rolling, to get the fans talking and communicating to other people. He was never the permanent replacement for Scott Demore in that president role. He was brought in because obviously that was the position that they had to change very quickly. That's the most important position. So Anthem brought in one of their guys, and I believe they were very happy with what he did, but he was not the long-term dude. So obviously there's with the websites love to run with this stuff that it's TNA's dying, these are bad moves, it's musical chairs, these people don't know what they're doing. That is not the case. Anthony Ciccone is a 30-year television executive, and he's very valuable to the company, and he's going to stay on with the company. He's staying on with Anthem, and he's going to continue to advise for TNA. And from what I'm understanding, he's the guy when you're negotiating television deals, to television rights deals. That's the guy that you want. Now, I'm not as optimistic as the average TNA fan that thinks they're going to have this new TV deal this year. I don't think that's the case, but I do think having that WWE rub is going to go a very, very long way, because they're going to be able to have conversations with people that would not normally answer your phone call. So I do think they will get off Access TV in time. I think that WWE wants TNA to be the number 2 promotion, because they also don't see him as a threat, because TNA doesn't operate trying to compete with WWE. They did once upon a time, but that's not how they operate now. They're kind of on their own island and trying to be an alternative, but they're not trying to directly make moves that affect what WWE is trying to accomplish, where AEW does. They're the ones competing for free agents and all that. And uh, so I do think that WWE rub is going to help him significantly. But Anthony's the guy that you want in that role, and he will be going forward. He was replaced with a fellow by the name of Carlos Silva. I am not familiar with him. With a name like that, it sounds like he should be headlining UFC this weekend. But the guy you want to go to over at the Mike and JD YouTube channel is Mike Gilbert.
Oh, hi, Mark.
I give him a hard time about this because he just goes so deep into backgrounds in a way that I just cannot imagine caring that much. So I give him a hard time about it, but I also try to do my best to direct people over to him. So if you want to know the background and the resume of Carlos Silva and the individual coming in to replace Christie Hemme, like if you want to know all that stuff, check him out over at Mike and JD YouTube channel. He is definitely your guy for that kind of thing. But to just wrap this up, this is not a negative. None of these are negative moves. None of them. And there's more moves to come. So stand by till the end of the recording here. I'm going to get into that a little bit more. to let you know what I know. But these are all positive moves. They're all moving in a good direction. All of them. Let's talk Josh Mathews here for a little bit. Now, under the Anthem umbrella, well, shit, even further back than that, the TNA and Impact has always had a very next man up mentality. And that works sometimes, but I'm not a big fan of that, of promoting within. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the understudy is more talented than the person who's sitting in the seat and ahead of them. But if you look at, franchises, like we're going to move on from our sports franchises, we're going to move on from our star quarterback, our veteran point guard, and we're going to promote the backup into this role. We're going to extend their contract, pay them a little bit more money. They're not going to make what the other guy did, but we are going to give them a promotion, if you will. Now, there's some situations where that works out great. More often than not, it doesn't. More often than not, it doesn't. So, what I had kind of been saying for a while is that the next man up mentality tends to water things down, because now it's the second person, and the third person, and the fourth person, and everyone's working for less money than the person in front of them, and they have less experience than the person in front of them. And I can understand if that's a financial move, but you have to spend money to make money. I've told you guys before, I'm into sports betting, and I'm a part of a group where, there's some guys that probably do it more so for fun, but because they're also responsible, they'll put all their bets in for like a dollar and make 50 cents, and maybe at the end of the month they're up 20, $30. But if someone's really trying to make life-changing money, you got to bet some real money. You know what I mean? I'm kind of in the middle. I don't like bet real heavy, but I don't bet a dollar. You know what I mean? Um, I like for it to be part of my income, but that's about it. But you got to spend to make, and I think that you have to put the best possible people in these positions. I've said that for a very long time, and we all know, all of us fans know, they've always had that. You know, I'll just say D'Lo Brown's name, for instance. You got D'Lo Brown, and he's wearing like 5 hats, which the more hats you wear, the more it dilutes what you're trying to do. I think the company's trying to move on from their mentality. I think there's still a degree of that, but I think it's more like, hey, instead of wearing 5 hats, I'm wearing two, or I'm wearing three. I think they're making a lot of improvements in that area. So to go back to Josh Matthews was someone that always wore a lot of hats. He was always that next man up in very many areas. He was the play-by-play guy for a long time. I thought in the Destination America era, the early Pop TV era, even though I complain about him a little bit, I thought he did a good job. He progressively got worse and worse as he did not want to be in that role and wanted to be in a producer role and do stuff backstage, which ultimately he did. And in the very beginning, he admittingly said in interviews or social media that he was taking marketing classes. Like he was doing like marketing 101, production 101, but they still put him in this role. But I think he did gain experience over time. And, how it was told to me is that they were okay with Josh Matthews' performance. He was not replaced. I don't know if he's being replaced yet, or what the deal is with that, because I don't know exactly what all his roles were. I know he was like a producer backstage, worked in the truck, I think, but it was not a performance issue with Josh Matthews. It was a personality conflict. Now, it wasn't told to me in these exact words. I'm putting them in my words. I'm kind of reading between the lines. I don't think he was extremely popular backstage. I think there was issues with how he talked to people and with how he treated people, and he became unpleasant to work around. And again, I'm kind of reading between the lines a little bit and putting it into my own words. It's not exactly what I was told, but that was That is what I took from the conversation. But they did acknowledge that he was good at what he did. He grew within the company. It's just that it was a personality conflict, and I'm under the impression people are glad he's gone, which is crazy because we thought he was going to be married to this company for a very long time. My perception of things is that, I mean, for the longest time, he was everything TNA and Impact. He was the only voice that you heard, regardless of platform, whatever they were trying to do. You just heard Josh Mathews nonstop. I think he was very highly regarded. He was in a great position. Over the years, I feel that as you're bringing in new management, new ownership, new people in new roles, and as I said, I think the people went from wearing 5 hats to wearing 2. So there's just more individuals back there, and I think that Scott, I think that Josh's status within the company lessened significantly to where he was like, "Oh my god, it's Josh Mathews," and now it's like, he's Josh Mathews. So I would imagine that probably caused some resentment, and only because I've seen this kind of thing happen. I don't know for sure that's what happened, but I've just seen it happen, and it is what my perception is of the situation. And I think he obviously sees his wife move on to a much bigger company, and I think at that point he started probably thinking, "Well, what if I went with her? What if? How could I?" You know what I mean? I just don't. I don't think he operated like, "Hey, this is the only job out there for me, so I'm gonna, check all the boxes on my end." Now he's kind of like, "Well, she moved on. Like maybe I can move on too." I think that probably played a role in the change of his personality and how he treated people backstage. But it does seem like they're happy he's gone. And some of these other moves that they're making, Johnny Bravo being promoted, I don't remember her last name, but Ingrid, who's the floor manager, I think I did meet her once. I don't know how long she's been around. I know I met a floor manager one time who was very nice, but it was a while ago. Uh, and there are people that it was reported that they're very liked backstage, and I'm under the impression they're very, very much liked as well. And I think there's just a focus on harmony backstage, and Josh Matthews was moved out of the role, and people are happy for it. Christie Hemme was probably very unqualified for her role. I believe they announced her in this marketing position back in October, and I think Alicia Edwards works with her or worked with her. But when they announced her for the role, I was positive she was already in that role. So I'm pretty sure she was involved in marketing in one way, shape, or form over the past couple years. I don't know how good she was, how bad she was. I don't know what she did and didn't do. I know that she was not particularly qualified for the role. But I would say, I think it's a fair assessment to say over the past couple years, TNA's marketing has gotten a lot better. And I have to remind you guys sometimes that promotion and marketing are two different things. Promoting something is a, hey, we want you to go to this show. Marketing is, this is how we're going to get you to the show. So, I would say that area has improved quite a bit, but I also don't think she had the experience for the role. It was one of those, we're just hiring within. I think that was the Scott Demore special, hiring my friends, hiring people within the Carney wrestling hires. And now they're just moving on from that mentality. The person that they brought in has actual experience in sports marketing, has an actual degree, and this is supposed to be a pretty major hire. People have asked me over the years, well, why don't you try to do marketing for TNA? Yes, I did go school for it, but I did marketing on a really, really low level. I don't have the qualifications to work for a wrestling company, even though I did chat with NWA for a little bit when they first got off the ground. I don't really have the qualifications for a wrestling company. I probably have more knowledge and experience than Christy Hemme. So this is a real, real positive move. And I'm excited for them bringing in an actual professional into this role. I'm very excited for it. Last thing I want to leave you guys with. I've been told that there's more moves coming and that they will not necessarily be popular moves. The only name to me that comes to mind when you're talking about TNA fans being in uproar because this person was released from their backstage role is Gail Kim. Now, I'm not starting rumors. I am not reporting anything. I was not told anything. Her name was not name dropped to me. I want to make that very, very clear. This is strictly speculation on my end. I hope that is not the case. I really don't. I love Gail Kim. But the Knockouts is not in a good place. It hasn't been in a good place for a couple years. And I bring up NWA all the time that they bring girls in who are very good. You know, and I like you just kind of see with the Knockouts, it happens every couple years. It's always like real stagnant for 2 years, and then they bring in some people, and then it goes back to being stagnant for a couple years. They still promote this as the best women's division of wrestling, and it's not. And I understand that being a knockout is very important to Gail Kim. I, I get it, but you cannot look at the division and say it is being handled in the best way possible. You just can't. So I don't know if that is. I hope it's not her. I just want to see the division improve, but I don't necessarily like. I don't think we need to be firing freaking Hall of Famers left and right, Rhino, and then you know what I'm saying. I don't think that's a good look. But I just can't think anyone else, any other changes that would they would make that would upset the TNA fan base. You know, if they were like, "Hey, Tommy Dreamer's out of creative," I don't think people would be like, "Oh, fuck this company." If Hannafin was removed from commentary, I know that my opinions on Tom Hannafin are not the same as the average TNA fan. I think most people really like him. I don't think he's bad at what he does. I just don't like him. I don't like his work. I don't mean personally. I just don't like his work. But he's relatively good for his role. But if they were to remove him, I don't think people would be in uproar about it. If you remove Ray Wall, I think people would be happy about that. I just can't think of what moves would you make that that would be unpopular with the people. But if it is Gail Kim's name, just don't be surprised. You heard it here first. Just don't be surprised if that's who it is. Again, we really hope that it's not because we all love Gail Kim. I've met her a couple of times and she's great, you know. So I hope that isn't the case. But there are going to be more changes coming, and as I told you guys, these just aren't all things that they could just address immediately. They're things you have to address over time, and we'll see who comes, who goes, but these are all positive moves. I have to like reiterate that to you guys. It is not about the companies dying or the company's a bad place financially. These are all positive moves. They're all seen as upgrades. It makes me wonder if we're going to start seeing that upgrade on the creative side as well, because you're hiring wrestlers and people within the wrestling bubble to work creative. And I use this example on my last Impact review that you don't go to Robert Downey Jr. and say, "Man, you did such a good job in Iron Man. We want you to write and direct the next one." You know? And I think that happens in wrestling all too much. That might be the next overhaul. The creative side might be the next overhaul. I don't really know. I'm just speculating, but there are more moves to come. So stay tuned because we'll talk about them.